Hello, we're going to be talking about the amazing stage of early childhood social emotional development. And just a moment here. So this is a time of incredible language development in imagination and social interactions. Peers are becoming more important, and it's just such a special time to be around children. If you've spent any time with children in these preschool years, they are so loving, and they have kind of a sense of themselves as being more capable than they really are, because that's a state that helps them learn. And so they're very full of this new sense of themselves, and they're able to take risks, and that helps them grow. Emotional understanding, interactions with others plays a really important role in the development of emotional understanding. And part of that is playing with peers, as we'll get into, and part of it is with parents. And when parents or teachers talk with young children about their own emotions and children's emotions, the children are more able to recognize and understand the feelings of others. You know, children's books are a really helpful strategy with this. I'm a huge proponent of reading with children, and I'm sure that you know that reading with children nightly is a very good practice. It's actually been found to be the #1 thing that parents can do to help their children do well in school. It's a bonding time for parent and child, and so much that they gain in their emergent literacy from just hearing stories, seeing the different concepts of print, seeing words. It's much more interactive, especially if you do talk with them about what they're reading, than watching TV. In this day and age, watching TV is going to be, or some kind of media is likely going to be part of their life. But as a parent, you have the opportunity to moderate it and to talk with them about it, and to limit the amount and the kind of media they watch. So important. What we choose to do as adults is one thing in terms of our interaction with media, but for young children, when their minds and bodies and emotions are forming, it's such a, and I'm digressing here, but it's such an important thing. And the book does talk about the stereotypes. There's gender stereotypes on media. There's racial stereotypes, and so on, and just, of course, the violence and mature themes that they're really not ready to handle yet about relationships and so on. So, and it's very passive too. They're taking it in, but they do get influenced by it in terms of aggression. If they see violence, most studies have shown that then they will act more aggressively. But reading children's books are helpful. There's a lot of good books with beautiful stories that show how characters work through problems, and it helps bring up different kinds of pro-social. And just to talk about feelings. So emotion regulation, advances in emotion regulation are influenced by cognition, executive function, theory of mind, and language development. Theory of mind is like thinking about thinking, and also creating, well, that's really metacognition, thinking about thinking. But theory of mind is like understanding stories about your own life. And so it helps to share stories about their life. That helps them develop their memory and their theory of mind. And all of these areas affect each other. So if you support the child's cognitive development through allowing their interaction with stimulating materials and reading to them, their executive function by helping them think and plan things out, their language development by reading to them and talking with them. If all those things support each other. By age 4, children can describe strategies for regulating emotions such as self-talk and finding a different activity if a playmate is not responsive. So they start developing these ways to help themselves deal with their emotions. I want to watch this brief video with you by Vivian Paley, one of my favorite authors from early childhood. And she passed away just a couple of years ago. And this is about empathy and pro-social behavior. Whoops. Okay. Here we go. Let's see here. Sorry about that.
We've got to spend time, day by day, hour by hour, in the first experiences of school with helping children learn how to act nice to each other, valuing kind behavior above all other kinds of behavior. The teacher sets the example, who is able to say, I'm sorry, boys and girls, what was the situation there that had us so angry? And let's see if we can figure out a better way of doing it.
So why don't you say, can I please use them when you're finished?
There's just been an altercation in which someone has been made to cry miserably, but you can't put the child in a timeout chair. All you're demonstrating then is meanness. All you're demonstrating then is isolation. That the only way to handle our relationships with each other is to isolate someone, to put him outside the social sphere. But that's not what you want to do. You just say, oh, that reminds me, when my brother was little, the children used to tease him so much because he couldn't climb the slide, and he would cry and cry. I'll be happy to know that our children wouldn't have made my brother unhappy, something like that. And everybody recognizes, even 2- and 3-year-olds, yes, I want to be the child who helps. Collect the stories and retell them every day. That reminds me of when Johnny saw that no one was letting Julia play, and he went and took her hand and said, here, you can play over here. Little things like that, worth, well, priceless. We must tell those stories from preschool on, so that when children get to 3rd grade, the 2nd grade, and there's no teacher around, they may say, that's wrong. You can't do that. You're making him cry. Or that's wrong. You're making me cry. Nothing is more important anymore than using all of the natural narrative skills we have to begin our study of social justice, kindness, and respect for each other as soon as children come together in social groups.
If you ever get a chance to read any of Vivian Paley's books, I highly recommend. She used so many stories with her children, and she was a strong believer in play, which we'll discuss, and helping children write stories and act them out. And this whole idea of empathy and pro-social behavior is so important. And in addition to what she was saying here, to listen to children, to really, really listen to them, which doesn't happen often enough, and to respect each child and listen to what they have to say and help them learn to listen to each other. If they have a disagreement between themselves, to just get down at their level and say, okay, I'm going to listen to you, and then I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to help make sure that you hear each other. And then how can we work it out from here? How can we work it out in a way that everyone's happy? It's so simple, but so powerful, and it doesn't happen often enough. We very often want to come in and just say, okay, now you get it for 5 minutes, and then you get the toy for 5 minutes, and figure it out for them, but then they're not learning to solve the problem for themselves. So we really want to encourage that. Play in early childhood. One of my favorite topics, play is the language of childhood. It is how they learn, how they grow, how they express joy, how they act out their feelings. They act out roles that they see. They play mom and dad because they see this in their life, and it helps them process and understand. Play therapy is built around this because children don't often have the tools to express their feelings and concerns in words, but they do express it through their play. It's kind of like how we process things with our dreams or with artwork or something. Children express it through their play and art and music as well. Again, their imagination is developing, and they're now engaging in lots of different kinds of play, which is in the chapter in Cuther: the parallel play, solitary play, associative play, and the highest form is symbolic play. This is what we want to encourage. And again, what's sadly in danger of disappearing in early childhood, in kindergarten programs, and even some preschool programs, they just aren't making the time for play. They're focusing more on academics. Academics is important, but if you push it too much too early, it's actually, stunting that growth in a way, because they're not ready for it cognitively and emotionally. They need this time to interact and play. And that actually, as you heard in the podcast, helps their brains grow and helps them develop so many different kinds of skills. Conflict resolution, as we talked about, they're actually creating story narratives when they play. It's pre-writing. They're learning about symbolism, which is pre-reading, that one object can stand for another object. A block can be a phone or some food or something. And that helps them, helps them understand symbolism, which is so involved in reading. They're learning about building friendships. They're so down to intrinsic motivation. They're so motivated by play. They want the play to continue, so it encourages them to work things out with each other and learn about each other. Active and rough and tumble play helps them learn their limits and what hurts and what doesn't hurt. Creativity, any kind of creativity, including play, including music and art and drama, are just how children blossom and express themselves. And spending time with outdoor play and in nature is so important for regulating their moods and helping them learn about nature, so that they want to preserve it later, and developing physically, of course. Types of play varies by culture, and the text has a good example of that. Depending on whether the culture emphasizes more collectivist or more individual. But children play everywhere. That is universal. Parenting style is another topic from this chapter, very important. Diana Baumrind came up with these categories, and it's not the only parenting styles, but these are ones that have been seen, and then they're across the board, and with some cultural variations with which we'll talk about. But parenting often falls into these styles and then has different results as far as how children are affected by it. So these two top ones, authoritative and authoritarian, sound similar, so they're easy to get mixed up. But authoritative is the gold standard, what we want to try for, and that is embracing both kindness and limits. Okay, there's a lot of warmth and a good connection between parent and child, but they are the authority. It's authoritative, and they do set limits, but they try to include children in decision making whenever possible. It doesn't mean giving the child all the power, so to speak, in making decisions, but they try to get their input and discuss things. Children raised with authoritative parenting, where they're shown respect and offered choices, they develop, studies have shown, social skills, strong social skills. They make good leaders. They have less anxiety and aggression and higher self-esteem. Authoritarian, think about like a dictator, strictness and right and wrong, disobedience is punished usually. Sometimes it goes along with physical punishment, which you will have talked about in your reflection this week. And those, we'll get back to that, but those who are raised with an authoritarian household, in that setting, they're often not encouraged to think for themselves, and they're more likely to become bullies. They're more likely to become obedient, but at a cost. They have lower self-esteem, more depression, and so on. And when you're looking at those two, the authoritative and the authoritarian, it's again time to think about what kind of people do we want to encourage and help to create. In our world right now, there is, with so many things going on with war and racial injustice and so many just major important issues going on right now. Do we want to raise children who just blindly follow authority? Or do we want them to learn to think for themselves and to have their own strength and their own inner motivation? So that's important to think about. Permissive parents often are warm and loving, but lack limit setting, and they believe that they should allow the child to do whatever they want. The problem is they're not given clear boundaries, and these children actually don't feel safe because children know that they need boundaries. They're not able to care for themselves completely. They need adult support, and so it doesn't really feel safe to just be able to do whatever they want, even though children might, want that at times or act like they want that, but it doesn't help them develop the qualities we want. They often have very low self-regulation skills. They're more likely to become obese or higher use of alcohol and more self-centered. Children, again, are naturally, can see mostly their own perspective, but we want to encourage them to grow out of that. The most harmful is the disengaged or uninvolved, or of course, abusive is even more harmful, but the disengaged or uninvolved is neglect, and parents who most often probably have their own problems and own dysfunction, and they're not able to really be there for their children. They don't even have the warmth often for their children. Maybe some do, but they don't have the ability to be very involved or caring. children raised in this kind of environment end up being aggressive and oppositional, have lower academic performance and antisocial behavior. Yes, and just again, my grandmother started a school in 1949 as in response largely to Hitler's Germany, and so that goes back to the authoritarian. She wanted to raise children who were able to question authority, and she built the school on communication and respect for each child. And so this is what we want to encourage more of. Now, having said this, with these parenting styles, it can look a little different in different cultures and not necessarily have bad negative outcomes. The most important seems to be some high expectations for your child, but also warmth. If you have those two things and you are consistent and loving, then the outcomes are going to be good. There are many cultural variations, and the effectiveness of disciplinary techniques may differ by cultural context. And even back to physical punishment, I never say that a parent that spanks is necessarily a bad parent. And most developmentalists will always tell you that there's always a better way, or a way that has more positive outcomes, because as the text mentions, with physical punishment, you're modeling aggression as a way to solve problems, and you're often hurting the relationship between the parent and child. And spanking's just not been shown to be effective. Sometimes it will stop a behavior in the immediate, but it doesn't have a lasting positive effect. However, in some cultures, it may be perceived differently, especially the authoritarian, not necessarily the physical punishment, but there's a style called no-nonsense parenting, which is often seen in African-American families that sometimes may live in a more low economic neighborhood, not always, of course, but representationally more often. So this kind of parenting is characterized by vigilant, strict control, as well as warmth. And sometimes they live in these challenging community contexts where safety is a really top concern, and they feel that this need to be vigilant is warranted in that setting. And the children often view this style as actually showing concern about their welfare, and it does not have negative effects. It has positive effects. So we always have to consider culture and context when talking about these things. So thank you again for listening, and see you next time.